All right, all right. How we doing, Daniel? What's up, Drew, Judah? How you guys doing?
Well, yourself.
Yeah. How's it going?
Crushing it out here, bro.
Heck yeah, dude. Let's freaking go. So I like to hear. How we doing, Drew? Letting a few more guys
Good.
pile in. How's your day going so far, Daniel?
It's good, dude. I think one of the most invigorating things that I've come to find is even when there is like a downfall or a shortcoming, like the way you bounce back
Mhm.
and like noticing how that's changed from how you used to like bounce back in the past, like that's incredibly like empowering. It's like the mindset is more quickly
Mhm.
recovered than it
Mhm.
used to be. And so, you know, yeah, just thankful, bro. So
Heck,
thankful.
heck yeah, man. Dude, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. It sounds like you found an example in your own life of that happening, where you maybe came back from a slip faster than you have in the past.
Oh, dude, like all the time, and you know, I'll go ahead and be upfront. It's
Yeah.
like, when you're struggling with just a long time with going to pornography all the time. It's like um I used to kind of like really diminish all the steps that I would make, but now like I look at every step I make and I'm like, dude, I'm changing like so quickly, so fast, and it's like, yeah, just being aware of the mental game is changing my life, dude.
Let's
So
go, man.
yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that, man. I love that. That's something that I think I was talking. It might have been Jeffrey. Jeffrey just popped in here. Jeffrey, he signed up. I think it was last week, maybe early this week or end of last week. And I remember Jeffrey asked me a question when we were talking about how this works, and he was like, "Man, so do you see guys like just completely like never like revert back to old habits like ever again? Like, does it completely disappear?" And I was just like, "No, like, no, that doesn't happen. No one is perfect. It's literally impossible to be perfect. But what this does is it brings those habits and those cycles from the subconscious, we just default into doing them and falling back into them, to the conscious where it becomes way more controlled, right? When we bounce back way faster. So that's what this is all about. And I'm really glad to hear that you're doing that, Daniel. That's exactly what this is about, man. Getting better and
Yeah,
better
dude.
and better, come back faster and faster and faster than ever before. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, and it's like I want to add too, like I think it's important to know that yes, you can like never go back. Like that's definitely a possibility, but
True.
like, it's like just like culture as a whole is like we're kind of wired to for that immediate gratification, right? And it's like no, like in the suck, like that's when you need to start paying attention, you know.
Mhm.
And just like we've been talking, like meaningful suffering, like putting myself in the situation, no, that's not meaningful. But now that I'm here, the suffering can be very meaningful, you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
So
Heck yes, man. Dude, that's awesome, man. That pumps me up. That inspires me, man. They're really good stuff. I appreciate you just kind of kicking off the call here with wins. I know this is our training tactics call, but I like kind of staying on theme here, guys. What are some wins that some of you guys have experienced, whether it's recently over the past week or even over the past few weeks? They could be training related, they could be totally separate from training, but what are some wins you guys have seen that we can kind of focus on and congratulate you for? Drew, you got any?
Not the top of my head. I think in regards to wins, just feeling that sense of not wanting not wanting to let myself down on a day-to-day basis and missing going out to the gym, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
Like for instance on Monday, I had it planned out where I was, working a little bit. Then I had some family in town, so we were doing something. They would be gone by about 5 or 6, and then I'd be
Mhm.
able to go to the gym at night and knock that out.
Mhm.
They ended up coming back to my house afterwards of wanting to watch the football game here, so it
Yeah.
got totally blown out. And then I try to get good sleep. So I'm like, and it was like 9:30. I'm like, I can't go to the gym right now.
Yeah.
But what I felt good about is next morning I like reached out to Alex. I said, hey, let's move my workout from yesterday to today, today to tomorrow. You know, I'm gonna get that knocked out. I'm not gonna just skip it. I'm not gonna miss that. So yeah, that just felt good that it kind of really hit me that hey, I can't miss that. Yeah. So it just kind of changing that mindset. Whereas before it's more of like, yeah, I'm not gonna work out today, whatever. And then that turns into not gonna work out today. And saying, it kind of continues and grows. But
Yeah.
you're kind of having that mindset where, yeah, I missed it one day, but now, yeah, I'm back on it the next day, and still gonna accomplish all my activity for the week. So
Dude, that is huge. That is huge. So you had like obviously family was in town, kind of threw off the normal schedule. You still planned around it. You're like, okay, cool. I'll still be able to get to the gym around this time. But family kind of overtook that schedule, hijacked the schedule a bit. They're like, hey man, we're actually gonna take over your house for the football game.
right.
And so weren't able to get the workout in, but instead of letting that create momentum to backslide, you just immediately recontrol momentum. Hey, Alex wasn't able to get that in. Let's reschedule this so I'm still on track. Literally perfect, right? That's awesome because I think that you having gone through that, the process of being able to miss a training day and then restructure your training week to get your training in is a bigger win than if things just went smooth and like you crushed that work as planned, right? Because now you're like unstoppable internally. Now you have that proof to your mind that you can keep momentum going even if momentum gets kind of derailed.
Yeah.
Which is going to build you infinitely more muscle, help you lose infinitely more fat, help you be infinitely more healthy than if you're just crushing it and things were smooth. That's huge. Seriously.
Awesome.
Heck yeah. More exciting than even some PRs, although PRs are very exciting anyway. Jack, we're kind of on the theme of sharing some wins. Could be training related, could be outside of training. This is the training tactics call, but what are some wins you've experienced over the weekend? Before you answer, for anybody else who's listening who might be thinking, man, nothing really off the top of my head. I think that it's beneficial to practice deliberately counting our wins because sometimes our wins go unnoticed. And even though we might be winning, it might feel like we're losing. And it's important to feel the right way about how we're doing. So if you can't think of any wins, then you're not thinking hard enough. Let's find those wins. Jack, what do you got for me, man?
So you know how you mentioned just do like the lateral raises in front of your thing. So I finally like increased weight. So I went from like 7.5 kilos to 10. Like I just finally hit like the 10.
Yeah.
I think it was yesterday that I did that.
Nice.
So super pumped for that. And then I also with my bench press I hit 70 kilos. So
let's go.
Yeah,
70 kilos. Big. Yeah. That's awesome, dude. Where was your bench press out like first week that you started?
I want to say like maybe, well, obviously I started with the bar. Yeah. Right. So I think I did like the first week was the bar, which is 20 kilos.
Yeah, 20 kilos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, heck yeah. More than double strength, man. More than double strength. And for you trying to do the conversion, you had 70 kilos, like about 145 or so, I think, in pounds. Maybe a little bit more.
That'd be 152, I think. Yeah. 154, sorry.
154. That's awesome, dude. Well, that's huge, man. That's you're gonna be very close to around the 185-pound mark, which is like a plate plus 2 quarter plates. I'm trying to do the kilo conversion, but that's like another big milestone. And then obviously after that milestone, you got the 2 big plates, which is 100 kilos, and you're not that far off, man. I think 100 kilo bench press is within 2023 for you for sure.
Nice.
That's huge.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah.
225 for those y'all doing the conversions. That's sick, man. That's a huge win. I know we talk a lot about in the training tactics, like how you don't necessarily need to be married to any exercise. Yeah. On paper, that's all totally true. But it is cool to be training specific exercises like the bench press because they're just such tangible milestones where you bench press 70 kilos in any gym on any day, right? No matter what's going on, you can bench press 70 kilos. Whereas if you max out, like a machine, it could be totally different on another machine. And, you might never see that machine again. So that's awesome, man. Really good stuff. Really good stuff. Congratulations.
Heck
yeah. Awesome. Cool. Judah, Jeffrey, Martine, do you guys have any wins off the top of your head? I can't tell if you guys are okay. There we go. Judah's here. Judah, what you got?
Not a, not a training win specifically. I'm actually behind where I was week one strength wise after my injury. I'm building it back up, but the prolonged lack of ability to exercise certain parts of my body have me on the lower body behind where I was week one. But I have a win of sorts, I guess.
Let's hear it.
My wife has always kind of inspired me with her discipline and her ability to stay on track with things and make things happen almost like a freaking machine. And she actually told me that she's getting more serious about some of her goals because I've been inspiring her, which I didn't feel that way, but she apparently sees it that way. So I'm counting that as a win.
Dude, that's a huge win. Let's go, man. Round of freaking applause, man. That is amazing. So your win for this week is your wife is taking notice and she's starting to take her own goals more seriously. That's bigger than any strength goal you could have told us. Because now we've taken the win outside of just your body, outside of your workouts. We're taking that win. It's impacting the life of your wife, right? Which is going to help her in so many ways. It's going to help your marriage in so many ways. Obviously, every man benefits here from having, confident wives with fit bodies. No need to sugarcoat that in any way, shape, or form. Everyone benefits there. But I think that kind of speaks to me on a personal level because I have seen my fiance over the course of just obviously being together, have her pick up on obviously my healthy habits and follow after my lead. And of course, I love that for so many reasons, right? But I think there's nothing that makes me more happy about being able to look at my fiance and know that she has more confidence just in herself, right? Like as a man, as a husband, as a future husband, sorry, not a husband yet. But that feels good looking at your fiance, looking at your significant other and being like, heck yes, they are happier because of the meaningful suffering that I put myself through. That was inspiration for them and that set the example for them. So amazing, amazing win, Judah. I really appreciate you sharing that with the team, man. Heck yeah. Jeffrey, how about you, my friend? I know we might not even be 1 week in yet, right?
Yeah, we're just I think tomorrow's a full week.
Nice.
So yeah, but so I can't. Yeah, I think it's a win just joining up for me.
Yeah.
And then also I've logged all my meals, done all my workouts, done daily walks that were prescribed, and added to that. I think my dog is loving it. He thinks it's a win.
Nice.
And then also the journaling. So the journaling has been a surprising and kind of delightful morning routine for me now. So I'm excited about that. Still kind of tweaking it, but just the fact that I do anything every day is a win for me. That I can focus on it. Yeah. So I think that's
awesome. It seems like that just implementation of the routine and then obviously taking action and joining just kind of gives you like a sense of control with, man, I'm number one, I did this. I made this obviously financial investment in myself. I made this commitment to myself, right? Normal people don't do that. That's something I like to tell everybody who is like newer in the program is like, you are special. You have a level of commitment that most people literally never find, right? So that in itself is a massive win. Just you putting the money down to say, I'm starting this, let alone implementing the process of that morning routine, of the journaling, of everything else that you're doing. So that's huge, man. It seems like that gives you a sense of control here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Dude, congratulations. I appreciate you sharing that win. Heck yeah. Heck yes. I love it. We got guys in here that have been here for a while. We got Jeffrey, who's a little newer. We got some guys that are kind of in the middle. Everybody's crushing it, guys. Lots of wins. Really like us sharing the wins here. Steven just joined us. I think now's a good time to kind of transition in some of the training tactics, guys. These training tactics calls. Some of y'all, this is your first. Some of y'all, this is your 10th. But these are really very open floor. not for the sake of just being open floor, just like talking about working out, because I can do that for hours, but honestly, not really. But this is more because with training is something that you will never be completely perfect with, right? There are always continually going to be things that you can improve about your training. There are going to be things that you can continue to learn about your training. And if anything, the more advanced that you get, the more consistent you become over a longer period of time, you just become so much more hyper aware of areas where you could improve, right? Those little 1% improvements, that the questions about training and optimizing your workouts really never stop, right? You always have to make gym decisions. I was in the gym myself this morning having to make gym decisions, right? So that being said, the best way to go about this is just asking yourself the question, me asking y'all the question of what were some moments throughout workouts over this past week or any time period where you were trying your best, but you weren't sure if you were doing the best you could do. Who has an instance or even just a question?
I mean, I've got a question.
Yes, run
I
it.
just wanted to say though as well, like before I start, is that when you say that like the questions that you ask like serve everyone else in the call and everyone else watches the recording, I haven't been able to attend for the past 3 weeks.
Mhm.
And I'm like in the second stage of the program in like week 19, but I still find value in watching the recording, listening to everyone's questions. So yeah, I think everyone's good. Like when you ask a question, I feel like you take up everyone's time. It's actually beneficial to everyone to hear all these questions that you ask.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
yeah, for me, I'm like curious, like with the finishers, they don't actually like have like a rep range, and they
Mhm.
just say go all out. So I'm just wondering, like, when do you kind of think about progressing to like the next weight with those kind of finishes?
Yeah. Okay. Really good question. So, what Jack's talking about is on some workouts, some of you guys will have these finishers, right? And these are like these, I guess you can say, quote unquote, burnout sets, so to speak. And these finishers, the goal of finishers is two things, right? There's a physical goal, and then there's really more of like a psychological goal, right? The physical goal is that when you have these finishers, they're usually a sequence of a few different exercises done in a very high rep range, so usually lighter loads, and they're done to failure, usually in succession with very low rest. And when you do lots of reps, just lots of muscle contractions, like a ton of them, like 20 plus, just by nature of you doing lots of reps, that creates a lot of blood flow in the muscles, right? That floods the muscles with this fluid. And so that itself, just muscles kind of filling up with fluid, the muscle cells, can aid in muscle growth a little bit, right? They call that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. We don't need to go into a bio lesson on that, but that literally just means having blood in the muscle could slightly help it grow maybe a bit more. It's nowhere near as certain, it's nowhere near as productive as simply doing your straight sets, right? Your sets to a low RIR, progressing week to week, high intensity. And so it's definitely more important to hit a PR on a set than it is to just get a pump, right? But a pump could help, right? And so that's why we have those finishers at the end of some workouts. The other reason, psychologically, is that finishers inherently are extremely physically painful in a good way, not in a painful way in which you're getting injured and your like joints ache and you think something's going to tear, but in a way where because so much fluid is going and rushing into the muscles, that lactic acid builds up and it gets trapped in the muscles, and there's literally just this burning sensation. Like it literally feels like your muscles are burning. And so we put those at the end so that you guys have this moment where you can finish a workout really strong. Obviously, you practice enduring physical pain, and that transfers into so many other things outside of just the workouts, obviously. And then you just get that massive win where you finish workout and you're like, nice, I crushed that finisher. That was really hard. I did it. It felt good. On top of that, the other psychological thing is when you get those crazy pumps, you usually look a lot more muscular. And so, you get a crazy pump at the end of the workout, you're walking out the gym, like bursting out of your t-shirt. And you're like, heck yeah, I feel good. So lots of reasons why finishers are in place. Now, the question you asked is, is there a reason that there's not like rep ranges attached to those? And how do you know when to increase weight? Now, the reason that rep ranges aren't attached to those is because the goal is very high reps, right? We're talking like 20 plus for each finisher, right? And so we say pick a light weight, go for high reps, and just go all out, right? Now, that rep range can probably end up somewhere at like the upper ends of like 50 reps or so. But when you go up in weight for these is way more subjective and way less objectively measured. Because remember, the goal here isn't that measured progressive overload. The goal here is go as hard as you can, do as many reps as you can, get the craziest pump that you can, essentially, right? And so realistically, if you feel like you're extremely fatigued at the end of a workout, then maybe you're literally not going to have the neurological ability to use much heavier weights during that finisher. So maybe you pick lighter weights when you're very fatigued, right? But at the end of the day, the load doesn't matter anywhere near as much as doing lots of reps and training them very hard during those finishers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so like with like the 20 reps, that's
Yeah.
like okay, so like the finisher has like the 3 exercises most of the time. That's like total, right? Yeah.
Overall, right?
Yeah.
Overall, right? Because you're
Yeah,
not
so-
resting between those finisher sets, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And so that would be like a minimum, right? 15
Right, yeah.
to 20, right? Minimum, what we would consider a high rep range. And I honestly go up in weight during finishers when I know that weight is so light that I'm going to be sitting there for like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just purely unpractical, right?
Yeah.
Like, I could do like my finisher with the 5-pound dumbbells, I guess, but like I'm literally going to be doing hundreds of reps. Right?
Yeah.
The other funny thing is that when you're doing these finishers, they're at the end of your workouts, and you probably are going to be able to use much lighter weight than you can even than you would think, right? Like I was using that 5-pound dumbbell example, but the reality is if I was doing some kind of dumbbell bicep finisher, like I'm probably grabbing like the 10-pound dumbbells at max, maybe the 15s. So you're using way lighter weight anyway during these finishers than you probably intend. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Awesome. Fantastic. Did that answer your question about finishers?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Beautiful. Amazing. Timothy, welcome, my friend. Awesome. Who else has a question? Dan, welcome. If you have a question, guys, you can just shoot them out, just answer them out. And if you guys talk over each other, I'll just, tell someone that they'll go next. But go ahead and shout them out with your questions. Wow,
I think
amazing.
one area where I kind of felt like I wasn't doing enough when it comes to workouts. I mean, to preface this one, just with my family situation, it's been a struggle for me to kind of make it out to the gym as of right now. But I do have a game plan that I'm going to initiate starting tomorrow, where I'll make it out there at least 3 to 5 times a week. But so at home, I've done a ton of push-ups.
Yeah.
A ton. Like I try to knock out at least 100 a day. Now
Yeah.
I've kind of put that off for a little bit to try and kind of not just let my body rest, but kind of just like kind of take inventory of where my body's at.
Yeah.
And I did Gabe, you might have poked in my chat and saw it, but I was kind of concerned about my imbalances, and I felt I wasn't doing enough. And factually, this is probably true. I probably wasn't doing enough because I haven't been hitting the gym, but I felt like I wasn't doing enough to fix those imbalances. And Chris was nice enough, and he said, no, dude, like you're actually kind of like rounding out a little bit more. And as I think back on that, I'm like, I probably am, but I'm still like not content with my imbalances. I felt like my left pec was a little off, and I know definitely my shoulders, as I kind of brought up to you before, are not in the shape I want them to be.
Yeah. Okay. So with imbalances, right? And I know this is something that you've been continually working to progress like over the past months, right? Which is totally cool because it is a process. Definitely not something that you fix overnight, right? Putting on muscle itself isn't something you fix overnight, let alone correcting any imbalances they might have, right? So number one thing is keep working at it. You're definitely progressing. Chris can visually see it when he looks at your photos, right? And so that's a huge plus. Now, the other caveat here is that inherently, when you're training at home, you have access to less equipment, right? And what that means is that you're in no way, shape, or form limited in terms of your potential, but you are limited in terms of your practicality because there's simply less tools in the tool bag, right? Like if you're training at a big gym, that's like having the decked out, like freaking tool bag that, you know, like your dad or grandpa would have. Where you're like, hey, have you got like this random size like thing? And they're like, oh yeah, of course, like it's right there. Like obviously I have that. Duh. But if you're working out from home, you might be working with like 18-year-old Gabe's like toolbox, right? Where it's like I've got a hammer, I've got a screwdriver. I could definitely get some stuff done here, but the weird little niche situations are going to be a bit more difficult. So again, you want to be careful with even having that as like a limiting belief because you truly can make all the progress in the world with limited equipment, right? But for very specific niche situations, that might require a little bit more equipment to just do so practically, right? So one of your solutions could be, right, especially since we're not in the gym as much as we want to be, looking for some type of very practical, very cost-effective piece of home gym equipment, right? Like, do you have bands right now?
I do have some. Actually, I got some right around me. I have some bands that were I got from PT.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm pulling those out here. This other one here I'm pulling out now, it's probably going to break as soon as I go to use it a little bit more effectively because the other two did. And then I got these. So these are so I'm not sure what strength this is, but you know it's light. It does some tricks. This one too feels a little bit stronger. And then this guy I've always liked because it's really nice for like sitting underneath an armchair and kind of like curling it a little bit, right? So, and then this guy, just more of the leg one.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, like a hip. Okay, hip loop.
Yeah, resistance loop. There you go.
Yeah. So that's a really, really good tool to have, right? And I think my favorite one that you just showed me is that one that has the handles already kind of like part of it, right? Yeah, that one right there. Because the handles is like another piece of equipment on top of the band, right? The other one's just literally just a rubber band. And like, yeah, you can do a lot of stuff there, but those are like PT style bands where you're not really having to like completely strain a muscle, just kind of move a muscle with resistance. Those handles make that band a lot more effective, a lot more practical, right? And so implementing something like bands and maybe even asking Chris, like, hey, can we put together just some home workouts with some bands just so that I have on deck for when I need to work out at home? Because if you have those bands, then now you're not restricted to movements that are on this really fixed plane where it's a little bit harder to address imbalances, like push-ups, right? Like your hands are stuck in one place and they're moving in this very fixed path. And especially if you already have imbalances, that can create some limitations where you might have some more advantages using like some dumbbells at a gym or something like that, right? Where they can move a bit more freely. Another great option will be using with the bands, right? Where your hands are able to move a bit more freely and you're able to find those comfortable ranges of motion, right? So I think that would be a really high ROI decision. Very high ROI use of your time for your imbalances, and also very high ROI use of your investment, having access to a team of practitioners here and being like, hey, can we get a little home workout created with some bands? And, we'll absolutely be like, of course, that's what you're paying for, right?
So, and I already have the home workout. I went over with Chris a little bit. No, I didn't show him all the stuff because I wasn't sure where it was at the time, but, it's like, we have the home workout kind of like mapped out as to what would be best to do and such. It's just, there's a lot of like timidness when it comes to initiating it here at home. you know, we got 4 dogs running around the house. You gotta take them out XXX these times, you know, this time, that time, etc. And then my mom might be on a phone call,
Yeah.
or like, oh, I should probably help my mom with this or with that.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who's like 100% physically capable of doing anything in this house because my mom is a little injured, and then my sister is also injured trying to heal. And so it's like I feel the need to be available when I'm here, and it's like it almost feels wrong when I'm physically putting myself somewhere where I would like where that'd be one of the last places where I'd be like where I'd want to like pull myself away, you know. And it's like it'd be working out from home and work, you know. I don't want to pull myself away from those two things much at all. And so there's a lot of timidness of like busying myself with something where I might potentially be a little bit frustrated if you went, hey Daniel, can I borrow you? And just like I'd be like, no, you can't.
Yeah. I think that sounds way less like a workout practicality issue and way more like something that you have to work on internally, right? And I understand that that's a challenge. I understand that that's a struggle. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to be like, no, I'm busy, right? That's never going to be a very easy conversation to have, which is why we've been avoiding it, right? But this is a principle that applies across a situation like this, across any situation where you got to have an awkward conversation. And that's the principle that people who truly want to help are not afraid to say what hurts, right? And it's not even like in this situation, you're directly helping like your mom, or you're actually saying, I'm not going to help you because I'm doing my thing, right? But very long game, like if you look at this on a long enough time horizon, you're absolutely helping her, right? You're absolutely helping your family by becoming more physically capable. And so if you truly want to do that, you got to be comfortable with having that hard conversation, right? If we can't have those hard conversations, man, we're really limited on the impact that we can leave, not just in our own lives, but the lives of those around us, right? If I wasn't willing to have that initial hard conversation with you when we first met, right? That was not easy. I had to say some things where I'm like, I don't necessarily want to kind of challenge him on this, kind of just met him, but you know what? I think it'll serve him. So let me challenge him on this, right? Jack's smiling because y'all remember those initial conversations. They're not easy.
For sure, yeah.
But Gabe, I have a lot to say to you regarding that first call.
Yes, exactly. Right. That's something that I have to with like our sales team, right? I still do some of the sales when people are first joining. But we have our sales team too now. And you know, you can imagine with our sales team, right? These guys are usually younger guys around my age, like mid-20s. But they're usually not selling something that requires like having a hard, you know, personal conversation, right? And they get in and they're like, oh my gosh, like I need to get personal with these people. I'm like, yeah, dude, you need to, because you need to be willing to help them. You need to be able to inspire them, right? Whether they're a good fit or not. So same principle applies here, right? If you can kind of and by the way, right, just going back to basic psychology, the way that you overcome any fear is by exposure, right? And so the second you have that first moment where you're like, hey, mom, look, I'm busy right now, I'm taking care of this thing that's a priority to me, right? Or however that conversation goes, you'll immediately become less timid, right? You'll immediately become more confident just by having exposed yourself to the conversation. Does that make sense?
100%. And it's actually something I've been writing on lately too. It's like it's this idea of like, you know, wanting to be in those uncomfortable situations, because like that's really where the strength, where the mental dexterity is grown. You know, it's just like, you know, it's like you of course want to feed your dopamine, you know, you want to get the dopamine and you want to like be happy, but it's just like, and I actually thought about this yesterday, but it's like I will be happier with myself in the long run. And I look back and I go, I made progress to better myself. I'll be happy with that person more than the person I could become if I just wanted to be happy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, if I just wanted to have my pleasure receptors be like met, if I just want to have success, I'm going to be so much happier and proud, not in a prideful way, but just like, you know, God is good. You know, this is what he's done.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I really steered away from seeking out happiness, and more so I sought out improvement. I sought out my best.
Yes, that's awesome. That's a great quote, right? Seeking out improvement versus just seeking out that pure happiness, which is really good. And I think maybe kind of staying on this theme that we've been all talking about across all calls over the last like 2 or 3 weeks here, this theme of meaningful suffering. That sounds like it's such a deep idea, and it just like precedes so many things that we do in life, but it can also be applied to like the small moments in life where literally just that moment of awkwardness could be a form of meaningful suffering, right? That you put yourself through for the greater vision, right? So really good takeaways and awesome situation. I'm looking forward to the next group call we have where I get an update on how that's going, whether that's the training tactics or another one later this week. How's that sound?
I got you, my guy. I got you. You're gonna be seeing
go.
updates in my chat too. So
Let's
we're gonna be
go.
running it here in the next
Heck
12
yeah.
weeks. Social commitment incoming later tonight. Gonna be
Amazing.
dropping like fire.
Let's freaking go. Can't wait to see that social commitment. Awesome, man. Good stuff. All right, cool. What other questions do we got, guys? Shout them out.
So I was like, I got like a lower workout on today, and I saw like a lot of people start to use like those belts for particular like exercises. So I think for me it'd be like the hack squats.
Mhm.
I was just wondering like if you think it's worth using those and kind of how they help you.
Okay, so you're talking about like lifting belts, right? That you're
Yeah.
Awesome. So lifting belts, right? So I'm gonna take this broad and then specific because this can be information that does help you long term in a very real way. But you need to make sure you know how it's applied, because if you don't apply this information correctly, it'll either be a complete crutch and like literally cause injuries, right? And
Right.
make you weaker. But if you do apply it correctly, it will only be an aid. It'll only make you stronger. Okay. So lifting belts, right? Now, I'm going to start at the baseline principle of bracing. We've talked about this before on training tactics calls, but bracing is basically your level of stability during an exercise. How well braced you are is essentially how stable you are. And your level of stability matters a lot when it comes to your exercises, because your brain will refuse to let your muscles fire appropriately if it's not in a stable environment. Okay. The example is like if you were walking on like the edge of a cliff and it was like a super thin cliff or something. I don't know. Yeah, I'm picturing like those roads in like Asia where there's like it can fit like half of a car, but somehow there's 2 cars going down the road, right? And
Yeah.
like it's gonna fall and die, but it's just like this casual thing that they do every single day. So yeah, a cliff like that, right? But you're walking, you can fall off at any moment. In a moment like that, where your brain detects that level of instability, it will be moving very like small muscular movements, right? Not fast, right? It'll be very slow movements, very subtle movements, no aggressive, violent, powerful muscular contractions when you're in that unstable environment, right? And when you're in that unstable environment, your brain just does not contract muscles powerfully. So if you're unstable during exercises, you are weaker. If you are unstable, you are weaker. And sure, there's some exercises that are designed to train your balance. That's a totally separate point. But if you're unstable in certain exercises, you are weaker. Okay. Now, what the belt does is if you have a lifting belt, okay, it is not going to, quote unquote, support your back. Okay. Because these lifting belts are at best pieces of kind of thick leather, right? And it would literally take just a few pounds of force to bend that leather, right? And so they're not really actually like protecting your back structurally in terms of like holding you together piece by piece. But what they do is they give your midsection something to push and expand out against. Okay, so now you take in this breath and you're able to push your belly literally against this belt that's tight on your waist. And when you push out against this belt, that pushing creates more stability internally. And so your body's just more stable, more balanced, and you're stronger overall. Okay. I mean, imagine it like I got this Diet Dr. Pepper can here. Okay. Diet soda, guys. I know we're all gonna die. No, you won't. But when this diet soda can is empty, and there's no pressure pushing on the walls, it's like kind of partially full right now. I can crush it like just with my bare hands, like boom, right? If it was an empty soda can. And that's how your body is if there's no air down in your lungs. And if this diet soda can was full, let alone if I shook it and it, had that filling, right? It would be much harder to crush just with my bare hands, right? It would be almost impossible, right, to crush with my bare hands. And that's because there's that expansion outward, literally because there's that pressure that's creating stability. And so when you have a belt on, you can take in your breaths, fill your stomach, and push out against the belt. And then that creates stiffness and rigidity, and you're inherently more stable. And when you're more stable, then you can produce more force. So you will just be simply inherently stronger. Now, the only consideration that you want to make is that this has much less of an effect on certain exercises and much more of an effect on others. So the example would be if an exercise isn't hard to stabilize, a belt is going to do almost nothing because you already have all the stability you need. The example would be like with a dumbbell curl. Like a dumbbell curl is not difficult to stabilize your body when you're doing it, right? You're using max like 35 pounds. Like if you're dumbbell curling 35 pounds with good form, you're freaking huge. Okay. I've seen Jack do 40s and he's got like monster biceps. But it's not difficult to stabilize yourself completely during a dumbbell bicep curl, right? So if you throw on a belt during a dumbbell bicep curl, you're just going to look like, cool. Extra credit, buddy, I guess. Right. But if you take something like a barbell back squat, where it's crazy unstable, where you literally could potentially have hundreds of pounds on one side, hundreds of pounds on the other side. It's like trying to perfectly balance in the middle of your back. And if like a fly landed on one side of the barbell, you can like, whoa, right?
Yeah.
Those unstable exercises. That's where a belt does make more sense. And that's where you'll see a drastic impact in your stability levels and your strength.
Right.
Okay. So you asked specifically about the hack squat.
Yeah,
right?
that's the only one that would be useful.
Right. So a hack squat, that could be useful, could not. You should definitely try it out because it's a lot of load. And so it's somewhat unstable. But if you think about a hack squat machine, it has that huge back pad, right? And that back pad is like in contact with 90% of your torso. And so you can really, really push hard into that back pad. And that back pad itself almost acts as a belt, just built into the machine. So the belt on a hack squat it may have an impact, but it also may not. And you should definitely just try it out, right? If you can't tangibly feel a massive difference, then just don't even take the 2 seconds to put your belt on, right? But you might. And so maybe you just prefer to have it on. Does that make sense on how the actual exercise itself determines the effectiveness of the belt?
Yeah. So like for example, like I've got like trap bar deadlift because you don't have that thing to stabilize. That would be probably a bit more useful.
Yep, exactly.
See you, Steven. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Have you worn a belt during trap bar deadlifts before?
No, never worn a belt before, no.
You'll feel an instant difference.
Okay.
Instant. And so now the important part is making sure you use the belt appropriately, right? And that's why I gave that whole preamble on how it's applied. Because if you use it the wrong way, it can actually just become kind of a psychological crutch. And you'll go for reps that you shouldn't have gone for because you literally think like, oh, the belt will save me. And it won't. Okay.
Yeah.
Because when you have that belt on, again, it only takes a few pounds of force to bend that leather, right? And that's even if you got the thickest belt that money can buy. I have the thickest belt that money can buy. Okay. I tore a spinal erector wearing a lifting belt, right? Like it will not save you, but it could help you. So the way to use it again is just making sure when you put that belt on that you take your deep breath down into your belly between reps, you push out against the belt and you tighten your core as if somebody's like trying to punch you in the gut. So you want a tight core. pressing out against the belt, and you have to maintain that pressure until the rep is over. Okay. Because if you let out your breath halfway through the lift, you've lost that pressure and you're inherently weaker. But now you're weaker with heavier weight that you couldn't have handled without that pressure. And now you're in a dangerous spot. Does that make sense?
Right. So it'd be like similar to, would it be like similar to the barbell bench press, where it's like when you pull up, you go in, or would you do it before? You breathe in when you pull up, and then when you go back down, you let it out?
So when the weight is and it's a different exercise to exercise, right? But when the weight is in a very stable position, that's where you would do the breath, right? So for example, in a squat, you would take that breath in your strongest point of the squat. That's the top of the squat. Do not take your breath at the bottom of the squat when you're seeing the Lord, right? You're seeing the pearly gates. Keep that breath at the bottom of the squat. But then when you get up and you're at the point where you could realistically hold that weight there for like 10 minutes if you really needed to, that's where you take the breath. Do the rep. Right. There's this video of Joey on Twitter squatting like 435 for 2 reps or something like that, or 445 for 2 reps. And he puts on the belt and you can see him take the breath. Like he does it dramatically. He's like, he locks it in. He fills up. He presses against that belt. He squats. And then he comes up, and when he's getting to the top, he's like, dude, like just because he's breathing out at the top. It's like, okay, it's super dramatic, but it does paint the picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Lifting belts, guys, definitely a great tool, but you have to make sure you use them properly. Don't use them as a crutch. If you do, you put yourself in dangerous spots.
I appreciate that because I that concept of like an empty soda can versus a full or even a half full soda can, it's like I hadn't quite thought about the breath. I knew that the breaths were important. When my friend who was bulked, he told when he wanted me to start working out, he goes, "You want to make sure you breathe." I'm like, "Oh, okay, make sure I'm like breathing regularly because like when you're working out, you can forget to breathe." I guess I don't know. So, but like. Now this adds an entirely new meaning to like taking those breaths and such. It's stability, it's the balance. So that's good. I appreciate this.
Yes.
Didn't know this.
That's a really good point about the breaths too, where people tell you breathe, right? Like don't hold your breath. But the reality is that there are moments during lifts where you do want to hold your breath because holding your breath in makes you more stable. But you just have to make sure to do it at the right time. You don't hold your breath throughout the entirety of the set because you'll pass out, right? But it's also doesn't help your lifts to just constantly be breathing. Like if that was the point, we would just be like, breathe as much as you can during all the exercises, right? The actual energy system that your body uses isn't even the oxidative energy system that requires that reuptake of oxygen. That's like the energy system that your body uses when you're running marathons and stuff like that, right? That the thousands and thousands of breaths matter. But when you're exercising, the breathe comes more into play in between reps to create stability. So you take in your breath, you hold it, you complete the breath with that held in breath so you're stable, and then you let it out between reps and rebreathe. Jack does this super dramatically too. You'll see him if you ever watch videos of Jack doing like a bench press or a bench press machine, those lips perk up and he's just like, I probably do it super dramatically too. And I'm just making fun of them, but you get the picture.
Hey, Gabe, I had some comments about using a belt that I've had some experience with. Just for if anybody, you can say if I'm right or wrong here, but I used to do like it would be like a reduction in reps through sets, right? So start at like 12 reps and work my way down, raising weight to 5 reps or so. I wouldn't put the belt on until I was in that lower range at the heavier weight, only using the belt when I was near like a PR type weight, thinking that the stability, the increase in instability at the higher rep ranges is making me stronger. My stabilizing muscle strength is stronger. So that's how I would use it.
There's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that, right? So on the lighter loads, you wouldn't use the belt And the goal, the intent was make sure that the stabilizing muscles are getting as strong as they can. At the heavier loads, you would use the belt, right? I think the
Yeah,
only
you'd see
go
you'd see
ahead.
people walking around the gym just wearing a belt from the time they left the locker room to the time they were back, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, put it on when you need it. And,
You needed that belt to step out of the car, I guess, right? That was a super unstable exercise. Just
I saw a
like
guy wearing it to the. I saw a guy wearing it to the grocery store after. So that's the limit.
lifting those groceries, man. You got to take it all in one trip, right? Put that belt on.
Yeah, help them out with the shopping.
Yeah, man. Oh my god, you got to have the
Those
belt on.
Sam's Club boxes are heavy, bro.
I got all those eggs. Got to put the belt on, right? Jeez, yeah, right, exactly. It shows you have the right idea with the belt for sure. I think the only adjustment I would make to not necessarily that even approach, but the idea is that the belt is going to have a bigger effect for sure at the heavier loads, right? Because if you think about just like what creates this idea of torque, which is just like how heavy something feels, torque, right? I'm not going to get too complex. I like to say, you know, we get into some quantum physics on these dang calls sometimes, but I think you guys can digest it. But this idea of torque is basically how heavy something feels. It's dependent on the load, the weight, and also the length of the lever arm. You're right. If you know like some physics, this might start to make sense. So when you have like a squat where the length of the lever arm of the weight is like far, like that weight is like way away from your center line of mass, right? It's like 3 feet that way or something. Then even one additional pound on that bar can like double how unstable it is, because the torque, there we go. Look at that with this beautiful term here, angular kinematics, right? Beautiful, right? And so torque is the load times the distance. So if the distance is 1, a unit of 1, and the load is 1, then the torque is 1. These are made up numbers, but you'll get the picture. Now, if the load goes to 2, it's load times distance. So now the total torque is 2. So just by adding 1 unit of load, you've doubled the torque, right? So putting on the belt is going to have that a bigger effect on the stability at heavier loads for sure. The only thing I'll say is that even with the belt, just because you have an aid in stability, it doesn't mean your stabilizing muscles aren't working, right? They're still working their hardest. You just have like almost another stabilizing muscle now, right? That's also working, which is the belt. But everything is still working. Does that make sense? Jeffrey?
Yeah, it makes sense. That does make sense, and to think about it, it is to think about like another muscle. I just always felt like putting it on at the lighter weights was not teaching me something, or I wasn't using it properly, and things like that.
It's more like
maybe I'm thinking about it wrong.
Yeah, it's more like at the lighter weights, it's less necessary. Right.
Yeah.
Because you using all of your stabilizing muscles obviously was able to stabilize the load at those lighter loads. Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you're still learning how to use your stabilizing muscles with a belt. If not, like even sometimes more, because you're just using heavier loads. Right. There's a lot of stability going on. If you can imagine, like if I'm doing a squat with 500 pounds and you look at me do that squat, like, would you say, oh, he's not using any stabilizing muscles? For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That's the idea. Yeah. So just keep in mind that you are working the stabilizing muscles, you pull on the belt. And I say that not to like just correct you or anything like that here. Like, you know, I'm that's not what it is. But this is so that you never have the idea that you're like cheating by using equipment, because you're not, right? Like you are not cheating. You are just adding this aid to benefit everything else, right? You're still working as hard as you were working if you weren't using the belt, right? Some guys are like, oh no, I don't use belts. That's cheating. I'm just like, cool. I'm just working literally harder than you because I'm able to do more. Like, congratulations, bud. But yeah, so the idea here is that you're not cheating by adding in that belt. Everything's still working, but again, totally right. At the lighter loads, it is less necessary. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. Really good question, guys. These are really good questions. Do you have any other immediate questions before we wrap this call up? Amazing, gentlemen. Well, this was a very in-depth conversation, man. I lost track of time. I literally lost track of time here, because this was really good discussion, guys. Really high-level questions. And I think touching back on Jack's point that he made at the beginning of this call, Jack said something along the lines of the fact that he hadn't been able to make the training tactics calls for like the last 3 weeks. And he found value in just being able to watch the recordings because of the questions that everybody else asked. And so that's huge. I want to continue to thank y'all for that, because that's where iron really sharpens iron, right? You guys obviously get the answers that you get for your own questions, but you simply showing up on this call and asking your questions provides value to somebody else who may not be able to be here, right? You simply showing your face, even if you don't ask a question, is just proof to everybody else's mind that there are other people going through that meaningful suffering with them. And that pushes us all through. So appreciate you all being here, and I appreciate you guys all asking questions. Great chat, y'all.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks, Gabe.
Take care,
Thank you,
y'all.
appreciate
Love
it.
you guys.
See you later.
Peace.
You guys.